Guys, let me debrief you. Had Twitter Spaces yesterday with MRI. By the way, if you guys ever want to join that, all you got to do, go to Twitter. It's a new thing, Spaces, and I don't know for how long, 2 to 3 months. It's about 3 weeks new to me. Go right to the bottom. You click Spaces, boom, it pops right up. You can listen in, you can engage, you can be part of it. We go every single week. But 3 interesting things happen. First off, we start off with a guest, Marvin Vettori. So I've shared with you guys, I like Marvin. I'm a fan of angry Marvin. There's 2 different Marvins. So we had regular Marvin on. And there was just one funny happenstance. He's going through his career. We're asking him questions. I had one thing I wanted to ask him that we got cut off, which is there was a period of time where there was a fight I wanted to see for him. Vettori versus Strickland. It made a lot of... That fight makes sense now. But nobody backed me up when I told you guys about this. Nobody's ever talked about it. Those 2 don't get along with anybody. Those 2 never agreed to it. And then I got comments from you guys. And you said, hey, Chael, you're missing it. Strickland's got one good friend, and it's Marvin. Marvin's got one good friend, and it's Sean. They not only trained together, if you watch their fights, they've cornered each other in the past. Now, I fully understand that, and I would never get in the way of it. But I wanted to ask him. I wanted to verify if you guys were right. You told me I could go watch corner tape. I don't have corner tape. I never went and verified it, so I just wanted to bring this topic up. Now, what was funny about this, and the whole reason I tell you this, so we were planning to talk to Marvin for a meaningful amount of time. Let's call it a half hour. Somebody asked Marvin a question and then thanked him when it was done, but it was a kind of thank you that if you were on a private phone call, you would think the person was trying to end the call. So Marvin thanks them back and hangs up. He's gone. We can't get a hold of Marvin Vettori. And there was just something about how organic and natural it was. He then get called in by the champ, Heinisch. I apologize. Heinisch was on the call, and Ian and I were interviewing Aljo. Now, this would have been worth your time. This was very interesting. How somebody's approach is prior to the fight is extremely relevant. You guys will remember the night of the biggest upset in our sport, at least at that time, was when Matt Serra finished George St. Pierre. Dana White that night went to the press conference and he referenced in very limited detail. He just kind of set it down and walked away. He referenced that George may physically be the greatest athlete the sport's ever seen. Dana then referenced that he had seen George in the back prior to the fight and that St. Pierre needed to get the mental approach under control. And Dana absolutely did not elaborate, but I know what it means. I know, and I think you guys do too. If somebody's scared, it's a big deal. If somebody's always scared, it's less of a big deal, right? If you're used to something, if somebody throws up for a fight, and many guys have, BJ Penn, Tito Ortiz talked about it before every single fight, they'd have such anxiety. BJ Penn walked to the ring one time in tears. Now, a number of fighters do have that emotion where you want to cry. You know what else to do. It's not because you're hurt. It's not like when you were a little kid. It's not even that your feelings were hurt or you were. It's something else, and it's a way to release it. I don't know if I could name one single other fighter who ever has actually done that, but BJ did. BJ was comfortable with himself, comfortable enough with you guys, and he was walking to the ring and he was crying. And it was a night that he fought Nick Diaz. Now, if BJ cried every single time, we don't have a conversation. It was the fact that it was something different. The champion of the world is now showing us, not even able to hide, and there's something different. So I'm bringing this to you because a guy's approach, maybe you're going to be Crow Cop. Nobody ever approached like Crow Cop did. He was completely stoic. I don't even know if my time on this earth I've ever got to use that word to describe another person. Mirko Crow Cop is the definition of stoic. Fedor was the definition of relaxed. But you guys judge that. You guys are looking at it. You're looking for a guy that's intense, and you have no problem if he's intense, unless the previous 3 times you've seen him, he wasn't. You go, what's different tonight? All I'm attempting to prove right now, and I'll get to my point, is just that the approach matters. It matters to us. We want to know. We want to know who's motivated. We want to know who has pressure. We want to know if those are circumstances that they have had to overcome before, if this is normal or if this is not. Now, I bring that to you because if there was anything I talked to Aljo for a meaningful period of time, half hour, better part of an hour. He is 100%, surprisingly, the same guy now as the champion of the world as he was when he was the contender. 100%. I don't think he knows he's the champion, for one. I truly don't. He spoke very respectfully of Yan, but it was from an understanding standpoint, not from a scared standpoint. He understood. He understood how well Yan, he called it caging. Caging has to do with the way that you block when you're under attack. Aljo paid him a compliment. I interpreted that compliment to mean the next time I'm opening up on this guy, I'm not going to empty the tank because he protects himself pretty well. I'm going to score my points and go to something else. That's my own interpretation. Seeing how calm he was, and again, would calm be good? Well, it is if that's what you're used to. Aljo has never been in a spot like this. This will be the number one watched fight of his life, for sure. The card as a whole, by example, I mean, you're going to get a lot of bounce from this Gilbert versus Chimaev business. You're going to get a lot of bounce from this. The Zombie's got a massive fan base, whether you guys are part of it or not. He's got a massive fan base. Volkanovski could not have possibly served his own career better than his last fight. People are dying to see him. I'm admitting it's a residual effect. And then, of course, you've got Yan and Sterling, who got their own business with a back. It's going to be the most eyeballs. Pressure comes with attention. Generally, I'm just here to tell you, it's not. There is nothing different. Guy goes out and wins a world championship. Guy is usually almost unbearable. He's a cocky prick. No, I'm not sure Aljo knows that he's the champion. Guy goes out and wins a world championship. He gets so full of confidence. And it's what we call your head's going to the clouds. No. Aljo's not accepting that belt. He's not accepting the outcome. There was one point where his temperature got raised, which had to do with the outcome of the last fight and the fact that it was put on him. Now, I steered him for that. I set him up for that because it bothered me. I didn't think it was right in that moment. I didn't love to learn this about the rules, that the fighter gets asked his opinion. I didn't know that was within the rules were followed, not begrudging. That shouldn't be part of the rules, and I wasn't aware that it was until Aljo, who was just fouled, who's completely exhausted, who has skin in the game and a horse in the race, oh, and by the way, turned out to be concussed, is getting asked his opinion by a perfectly calm, licensed personnel. I didn't love that. So I brought it up. I teed him up. But he did say that I was right in terms of, yeah, that bothered me. I did not deserve that. I did not deserve to be judged in that moment. These are the rules. Words weren't followed. Point was taken. Disqualification was called. My hand was raised. His was not. Oh, and by the way, there was a prize that came up with it known as the belt. I mean, he was very matter of fact. It was a very interesting phone call. I don't know if I've ever believed in Sterling more than when I spoke to him on the MRI call to judge his temperature. He also made one claim, and this is all mental, guys. This is all a mental side that I'm talking about. But this was the most refreshing new champion I have ever had an experience with. When I tell you these guys change and that belt changes you, I'm standing by it. I don't know if he knows he's the champion. That humble, that hungry. He made one comment. I'm talking the mental side. He made one comment to the physicality side. Now, this was very interesting because I had never heard this before. I want to share it with you guys. He talked about the weight cut. He didn't weigh in on that fight at all. He didn't talk about the jab, the speed, the cross, the kicks, the wrestling. He did not talk about that fight. And I mean none, zero. He talked about the weight cut. He said that was the single worst version of myself. And he said, I've only had a botched weight cut one time in my career, and it was that one. Sure, I made the weight. Sure, I was within contract. It was a disaster. He didn't elaborate. I can only guess what that means. Has to do with dehydration, is what it means. Also has to do, and you guys probably wouldn't consider this, with the way that you replenish afterwards. You can botch a weight cut, and the weight cut wasn't anything out of the normal. If you botch the replenishing process, you've screwed the whole thing up twofold. Aljo got done saying that. He says, the worst version of myself was my single worst performance I've ever been in a cage. And I still did just fine with this guy. He was just being matter of fact. You have to understand that. He was not bragging. He was not being cocky. And he was not trying to sell anything. He was answering and discussing what was in front of him. So whether you like this or not, it's important that you understand the temperament as I relay this to you. He was talking about himself. He said, me, if I was to face that Aljo, who did just fine with Yan, who went several minutes and several exchanges and multiple, did just fine, I would crush that guy in 10 seconds. That's what he said. That's a very real thing. You're only going to know in hindsight, is this weight cut in fact going to be better? Is the replenish process that I speak about, is that going to be better? We'll know in hindsight, but Aljo has a massive body of work. This guy has had massive competitions, and don't just think of his fight career. This is a wrestler who's used to weighing in and going out performing. He said of his life, he'd never screwed it up more. And he said he felt the effects. He knew this wasn't going to be a great night. He knew he was at his worst and went out there anyway. Very relevant, guys. It's very, very relevant because I've never heard him talk about that. That was the only sign from a physical standpoint. So after he got done, I simply said, Aljo, my interpretation of what you're saying when you talk about the weight cut is the energy. The energy that you had the night of. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I ran out of energy. Now, that's interesting, though, because that's what we all saw. This has been worded. And if I was to quote the words that I saw, but they're headlines everywhere, and you guys have seen them, that Yan was starting to take over. When you talk about a guy starting to take over, all you're talking about is that the opponent got tired, that the opponent's tired. That's what you're talking about. It's not as though one guy got more energy, right? He's not Popeye and he has some spinach in between. All of a sudden, the better version of himself is coming out. You're talking about a deplenished version of your opponent. That's the game. No foul ball there. That's 100% what this sport is, come hook or crook. But Aljo weighed in on it for the first time that I've ever heard. He said, yes. I was that. Now, that was very telling because I saw it too, and I thought, okay, from a conditioning standpoint, we're always searching for more conditioning. Fighters will work extremely. You'd be blown away if you knew how hard average day of a fighter was, but he's doing that not to just get better. He's doing that to get better in the form of having more energy, being able to throw more things at the wall longer than he did the day before. I thought maybe that was going to be Aljo's focus because it's what I saw too. I saw him run out of energy. We'll word it like that. I thought, well, he's going to have to run more. He's going to have to do more sprints on the Aerodyne bike. He's going to have to spar more rounds. He's going to have to take less days. I'm going to have to get in better shape is what I thought. He says, no, man, that's not the focus at all. My shape is just fine. All I had to do with the weight cut, that's relevant. We're going to come later in the week to fight prediction time. I'm going to tell you who I'm picking so you know who to go against, right? I get the Chael curse, but this influenced me very big. And I also did touch on, I'm just going to share this with you guys so that you hear the answer. I did touch on Yan and Yan's approach because for the first time ever, Yan appears to be angry. I have never seen Peter come out and come after a guy. Not verbally, not before the fight. In the cage, yes, every single time he's competed. I've never seen him come after a guy. I've never seen him appear to want something more. I've never seen him appear to want a specific opponent of him before. And all I can do is personalize. I can just tell you that I had my guy. That was that exact same situation, and it did not work out for me. It was great for training. I trained my ass off. I was motivated. I was there early. I stayed late when that actual moment came. Again, to come back what I talked about different. If you do something different, you can expect something different. I'd never been in that spot before. I thought it was going to be a great thing. Just for me, turned out not to be. The outcome was just fine. It wasn't the performance. I always talk to you guys about the performance. Don't ever think about the outcome. How you're going to perform, though. What are you going to do? Generally, 3 things. Put those 3 things in your head and be disciplined. And no matter how tired you get or how hurt you get, stay on track with those 3 things. Now you're talking about the performance. You go in the back, your coach will tell you, great, Jay, you did everything we worked on. Your game plan was phenomenal. He'll take you out to dinner. He'll buy you a steak. And maybe you got the silver medal that night. It's the performance, not the outcome. And I will share with you, talking to Sterling about Yan. First off, this guy didn't know he's the champion. He does not know he's going to be carrying the belt. He does not know that he's defending. That's a very big positive. Whether I'm articulating that clearly or not, that is a huge deal. And secondly, he offered no excuse. It's not an excuse when you talk about a botched weight cut because he blamed himself. The blame is fully on him, and that's where he's putting it. So it's not an excuse. It's an observation and a reason for a specific performance that he had that he believes he's put his finger on and he can therefore correct. Guys, it changes a lot. Stick around. Got a couple more days to digest before we got to break down the X's and O's of that fight. But just so you understand, that's where Aljo's head at least today.